Hi.
So as we know, the stream kind of fills in a little bit as we get started. So welcome everyone. I hope you've all had a beautiful break. We missed you last month, mainly because a few outside of work, outside of tech issues, particularly on my side of the fence. Good news is everyone's healthy, which is a good thing. Yeah, so definitely missed last month, but welcome back. It's great to be back in 2021 post-COVID, right? Yeah, we're very glad 2020 is gone. Probably the best thing to come out of this year so far, by the way, has been WandaVision, just in case you're wondering. Am I going to wind anyone up?
Let's see. How about we ask for a comment to make sure someone's actually listening?
What? Oh, I suppose.
Let's check the stream. Oh, good.
Do we have any people on the stream saying hi? Say things. Say things. Waiting for it. It's very quiet. I know there's a slight delay. You have to type on the keyboard. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. It's not a loop. All right. So while that's happening and people are saying hi, there we go.
We have someone.
Hangry.
Hello.
Love it. Hopefully we're not interrupting dinner, Hangry, because then you'll be hitting that keyboard very hard because hangry. Amit, hello. Yeah, so 2021's underway, and just in terms of things that are happening, James is going to run through the prize thing and thank our sponsors, as is always the way. Do you want to do that now, and then I'll kick back in and talk stuff? Because we're organized how we do this, as you can tell.
Yeah. It's only been, what, 13, 14 years? We're getting
yeah, you think we have it figured out by now, but it's like, yeah, we just roll with it.
So we've got the usual 2 JetBrains licenses to give away. So I'll listen and come up with some questions during the course. 2 licenses for any of the JetBrains products. So listen closely, stay to the end, and I'll post them at the end. And as usual, the first 2 correct answers get the licenses.
For all definitions of correct meaning, that'll do.
Yes.
Yes.
Or correction by Jeff if I've got it wrong.
So the other thing that did happen this week on the February the 17th, so it's kind of not this week, it's last week, but is .NET 6 Preview 1 came out, which is kind of cool. So continuing on that theme of more .NET releases more often, Preview 1 already, given 5 only really hit GA in November or whatever it was, it's really good to get onto the next one. Some of the interesting things in there is .NET New Android. And actually from the command line, type in, I've done this now, by the way, it's kind of cool. So working towards Maui for the runtime interface, goodbye Xamarin Forms, hello Maui. Gradually getting there. Jeff will be very happy with that. But it's definitely that idea of bringing together all the rest of the runtimes into one thing. So no more mono, no more anything else, just one .NET for all the platforms all the time from this point forward, which is really cool. Obviously, early preview, there's still a whole lot of things coming through that need to be built out and developed. But for those who like kicking the tires on things and trying stuff out early, feel free to. Blazor is getting more attention as it does, and WebAssembly in particular. So how do you write .NET code, compile it to WebAssembly, have a decent deployment package, have that small enough and contained enough to get out into prod? The .NET New Android, .NET New iOS, so mobile projects, definitely getting some love. Not a lot in terms of controls at this point. It's very much the plumbing pieces that need to be done, as in removing the mono runtimes and the other things that were happening in that space. Single file exes getting more love, starting to get more development as well. So they got a lot last time, but there's more coming. HTTP3 or Quick will be coming in as well. And there's a bunch of other things that I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. Oh, ARM support as well, ARM64. So yeah, all sorts of things happening. Go have a look. Someone post a link into the chat if you're already across it. Otherwise, I'll do that shortly. And I think they're the major things that have happened since the start of the year. So, after that little pause, I think it might be worth introducing our guest. Oh, really? No, did I do that? Was that me? Or you've just copy pasted the link incorrectly from Twitter or from Meetup? Either way, it's good to make sure your brain's working. Okay, we'll fix that for next time. Jeffrey Huntley is joining us today from his salubrious studio out in the road van. It's kind of like he took a Channel 9 footy road van, the broadcast studio, took off, drove it like he stole it, ended up somewhere out. I have no idea. Actually, Jeff, where are you at the moment?
I'm currently outside the Richmond RAF base. I was over at some relatives and I had to go driving because there were dogs yapping in the background. I decided to trade off dogs for the sound of Hercules jets taking off. So if you hear one of those, that's what's going on. Also, if you're in the area and you want to go for beers afterwards, well, just say hi.
So if you're loitering around outside an RAF airbase, got it.
Yeah,
that's not sus at all. Hi, Australian government.
Hi, that's Richmond. Richmond is all RAF airbase.
So what we thought we'd talk about tonight, for those joining, is Jeff's doing some very interesting things at the moment. Something that's a little bit unusual in terms of how we might normally think about living the remote lifestyle, the remote developer lifestyle. And literally taking remote to the road. So, Jeff, do you want to talk about what you're like? Not just that you're outside a RAF base, but what you're in, what you're doing, what's going on, and why is there a microwave like this far from your head?
Yeah, sure. The microwave's for cooking food, Richard.
Oh, good.
That's what it's there for. And when you're driving, if you ever get a little bit hungry, you got yourself the trusty little pie oven. And that heats up 4 and 20 pies, mint, like awesome. Over there is some artwork because you should be cultured, and I like that artwork. To the corner we have, I'm 86% battery right now because there was no sun in the skies of Richmond today, which is sad. But there's enough battery I could probably keep going for another 5 days. In short, I guess I'm pushing the extremes of what van life and remote life. I'm not normally in the city. I'm normally out in the forests, and I'm working remotely from my van. And there's the Hercules jet.
That's awesome. So I find this really like kind of crazy, but kind of fascinating at the same time. Obviously, it's not something normal. Most of us are normally, living in houses with bookshelves behind us or kids running through curtains, James, or anything else. But you're kind of literally in your house on 4 wheels or 6 wheels. I'm not sure how many are at the back of the van.
4.
All the time. Like, how does this work? What's the experience like?
Well, actually, can we change the first screen?
We can.
Let's visually explain it. Nice little sunset there. So, how does it work? Well, first, this is the van. It's more than a van. It's essentially a mobile office. It is my mobile office. It's where I it's where I live. It's where I work from. And it's also essentially a gigantic backpack on wheels. Like, I've always wanted to live a minimalist lifestyle. And this is how I do it. Up on the roof there, you'll see, or over there actually, 3 massive solar panels. They're the same solar panels you'd normally see on a house. In total, that's about 1 kilowatt of electricity, which is pretty cool. It basically, I don't need to plug in, like, unless the weather is absolutely terrible. But depends. If you close to the beach, yeah, sometimes you get lots of clouds, but if you start heading out west, it's sunny skies for days. So that's lovely. Yeah, so it's basically a backpack on wheels. If the weather is bad, I am normally like in the van as I am now. But if the weather is good, I actually take out a little little tent. I'll show you what I mean. I normally take out a little tent like this. And yes, I do have an area on chair.
Hang on. Is that to
if you're going to be
scale with the
working, no. But that desk would be impressive if it was.
chair?
But table, that's an interesting topic about tables, right? Yeah, so chairs, I kept my office chair. It's really important to look after your back. It takes up a lot of space. I could use camping chairs, but I pack an office chair. It's a little bit ridiculous, but it's lovely. For tables, I use a camping table, and it's important to, one, get a smaller table, and that's not to scale. But two, is the legs independently adjustable. Because when you set up a tent outside so you can enjoy the nice views, it's not the land isn't flat, like it's sloped. So you want to be able to adjust the table so that way you're not working like this. So yeah, that's
Your laptop constantly sliding off.
Yeah. So this is one side of the office. And the other side of the office is, well, this. Like, I just park anywhere. Like, I'm down in the middle of Lane Cove, and some people are paying $2 million for this view, and I'm getting it for free. It's quite lovely.
That's so cool.
In the city, you really can't set up tents like that. You'll get the cops called pretty fast. But hey, you can have the door open and you can enjoy those views for free. It's lovely.
That's very cool. So, what I see, there's some pipes underneath, and you've got things hanging off the back. What underneath the solar panels? What are all those things?
Yeah, sure. So on the left is fishing rods, because you want to go fishing. So you put fishing rods up in the top left pipe. The next thing across over there is a Telstra 4G antenna connected to a very good modem that you would normally find in a house. It's a category 19 modem, and it's one of the best antennas you can get. Across from that is a Wi-Fi antenna connected to a USB alpha Wi-Fi antenna. Across from that is Optus, exact same thing again, but Optus. Across from that is the other Wi-Fi antenna, and then finally is a Vodafone connection. Now, that's my internet currently.
So hang on, the Wi-Fi antenna is so you can be wandering around like 50, 100 meters away from the van and still have decent reception back to the van, and then you're going into the thing, or what?
The two tubes are incoming Wi-Fi. So if you're parked at the front of IKEA or Anytime Fitness, etc., what you do is you set up a hierarchy that will use that Wi-Fi first, and it won't use your 4G connections. And so what I'm actually doing is I bond all the internet connections into a singular internet connection, and you assign hierarchies to them. So you don't use the 4G if you've got a strong Wi-Fi. You connect it at your friend's or a neighbor's house. You don't use your 4G connection. It's all transparent. It runs in a single link. What you can kind of see there is actually Unify AP. Just between, and that's external Wi-Fi. So that means you could be sitting down in a park and you will have 300, 400 meters of internet range. You can be sitting at a park table and you could be on your Uber internet. The fastest speed I've got on this so far is 547 megabits.
No way.
Mm-hmm. And like,
so you've basically brought your own NBN connection.
Yep. And I'm sitting in the middle of a state forest, and I have better internet than most people have in the city. It's ridiculous. It is amazing. It's ridiculous.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So all of that comes through into a single router internally, and then
Yes.
go from there. Okay, so actually a few questions as we're going. Sarah wants to know what happens if there's a hailstorm with those solar panels.
That's one of the risks and downsides. So what you do is you start building up a support network really fast. And when you're planning or where you're going to be staying the night, that's one of the concerns you have is like if like the weather changes unfavorably and we get the massive hailstones that we do in Sydney, where do you go? Like, and something you plan, is there a bridge nearby? Can you fit under that bridge? The vehicle's quite high. Can you fit under that bridge? Is there a friend that you can go to? So when you're planning your week, every week you're spending a lot of time planning your week, what your travel's going to be. It gets easy with time. But that's one of the things you consider is, well, how do you protect your van from hail damage? And at the end, if hail's coming down, you can kind of mitigate it, but there's not much you can really do. It is all insured. So you replace the solar panels is basically the answer. Luckily, that kind of protects, because it covers the entire roof, it kind of protects the top of the van pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And if the sides get beaten up, well, they're going to get beaten up as you drive through a state forest anyway in time.
And then Andrew's asked if you're using any LTE signal amplifiers or if they're prohibited in Australia.
Yeah, so he's talking about Selfire Goes. So I'm not using any of those. They are very handy to amplify a marginal signal to a device that does not have a good antenna. So because I have a really good antenna, or three of them, I don't. It's not an issue. I don't need a booster. Those antennas are the booster. Now, if I need to make a phone call or receive an SMS, for example, logging into MyGov or any other things that are SMS off based, what happens is ever since COVID's safe, and I guess we'll get into that later. One of the things that they did was we actually managed to get the researchers. We actually managed to move Telstra's roadmap. We managed to get Telstra, the behemoth, to change the roadmap and enable SMS over Wi-Fi. So that essentially means I'll have no reception on my mobile phone at times, but I will still have exceptional mobile phone service in the sense of phone calls and SMS because of the things that happen with COVID safe through my bonded internet. So that's pretty cool.
That is
one thing I didn't. Yeah. One thing I didn't mention is not pictured there is an Optus 5G connection. So when I'm in the city, it kind of goes home Wi-Fi, Optus 5G, 4G, and then in the future, Starlink will be somewhere in that hierarchy.
So I suppose
Internet's everything.
Your internet connection across mobile internet obviously is going to be a little bit more for the data charges, but at the same time, you're not paying for a house and a rental. So I'm assuming, it's like, so.
It's a cost of business, right? If you want to be able to provide income, you need, this is just a cost of business. And a lot of these 4G plans are like 250 gig, 500 gig. By the time you merge them all together and then you add the Optus 5G Unlimited, you're looking at a max potential of 5 to 10 terabytes a month that you can download. And then you add Starlink on top.
Probably okay, even with all the Netflix
Probably
streaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so here's a question that's a little bit different. How do you actually get deliveries?
So I haven't
you
yet
go online
tried
shopping
this.
with your 10 terabytes of data and you buy something and you go, now, where am I? I'm going to ship this to 15 kilometers down this dirt road. It's somewhere in a state forest. Is that all right, dear provider?
Yeah, so I have not done food delivery. It's been tempting to do Uber Eats delivery to this GPS lat long. I don't know if it'll work. I will try it. But the entire notion of a postal address is really strange. For example, if you're using a product such as Google Home or Alexa, etc., or even Google Maps, please set your home address. What's a home address? Like in my situation, what is home? So this is fascinating. You know, like the problems that software developers make about names, assuming that the person has a first name and a surname. I have my own category of those things that software developers have made faulty assumptions. Like it's not just me on the road. There is a lot of grey nomads on the road, and they have no definition of home. But product design wise, we keep asking, what is home? So that's a fascinating topic in itself. So where do you get deliveries? It's simple. Australia has parcel collect. So what you do is you just open up your phone, you go tap, 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 and you get a new postal delivery address, and you get all your parcels delivered there. What you do is you kind of set up subscriptions and routines with like Amazon. For example, multivitamins come every couple of months, and you just set it to auto deliver to the address. And when you move to a new address, you just change the delivery address. So you end up kind of like automating a lot of things and removing the need to go to supermarkets.
And so that's all good unless obviously someone delivers late, which never happens. And then you've kind of gone 500 kilometers that way, and then the thing's still back there.
But it actually works really well as a forcing function to keep moving. Like if you're enjoying a place a little bit too much and you know you have to get to the next destination, what you do is you get your mail delivered to the next destination, and then you've got a 14-day window where you've got to get there before your mail returns to sender. So it works two ways.
Kind of cool. All right, so talking about, thinking about places to go, where this kind of a separate question. What's the favorite place that you've been to so far that you'd go, if I have to go back and visit somewhere, I'm going there?
Well, I've just shared out a personal favorite. That's a photo I've taken just looking outside the van from my desk in my office. That's what I mean. Like you can have multi-million-dollar views and for nothing. That's at Sawtell Headland.
So cool.
And literally you just turn around and like your Pomodoro breaks over and you can walk out to that. Like no having to get down elevators and all the rest. If you only got a 5-minute, 10-minute Pomodoro break, you turn around and that is there. And that's absolutely lovely. So that's one of my favorite places, Sawtell Headland.
Yeah.
Other places, Lightning Ridge, or just anywhere out west. If you start heading west of Sydney, there's some beautiful places, and it's worth exploring.
All right, so slightly more interesting question, maybe, but on your Pomodoro break, you find yourself with a sudden need to go to number 2s.
Yep. Sure, let's talk toilets.
Obviously, if you're out in the bush, you can go do a bush wee or whatever else, and that's great. But if you were parked out at Lane Cove, interesting.
Let's talk toilets, Richard. What would you like to know? What would you like to know about toilets? Everyone wants to know about toilets.
I know, because it's something everyone's got to experience every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, you've eaten something bad and you've got to experience it immediately.
Well, that's exactly why you should have an onboard toilet. You should be self-contained. Like the toilet that I've got showing there, that's a composting toilet. And what happens is it's just like a compost. You just like do your business, then you turn the handle. And at the front, you see a bucket that separates number 1s and number 2s. And as long as you separate number 1s and number 2s, it never smells at all. It's just like composting. And there's a fan that runs continually and that vents out the compost and keeps it dry. In the mornings, you make yourself a cup of coffee and you throw your wet coffee grinds in there, and that just keeps the good bacteria going. But you never use it. You'd only use it if you're really sick or you're traveling with children. If you've ever been camping with children, you know the pain of like 2 a.m. trying to carry kids to a smelly long drop. This is your solution. If you're building up a camper van, get yourself a toilet. What you do is you lock up the van from the outside and the inside, so like the kids can't leave when you're sleeping. And if they need to go to the toilet, they go to the toilet, right? And they don't wake you up. Trust me, this is an investment you want if you're traveling with kids. But yeah, you never use the toilet in case, unless it's an extreme emergency, because there's so many facilities around Australia. Like there's public toilets everywhere. They're mapped. they are mapped all around Australia on Google Maps there because of the Accessibility and Disability Acts. And to be frank, you kind of don't anyway, because anywhere there's like Anytime Fitness or Fitness First,
Yeah.
there's your routine. Like that's your toilets, that's your showers,
That's cool.
and there's your fitness. Yep. So you tend to station yourself
you have a
around
gym membership when you're covered.
Yeah, you'd get a gym membership, you're covered for your showers, your toilets, and your fitness. Like your morning routine, you do that and go to work. But when you're in the forest, it's a little bit different because you can't really take the gym with you. Or you kind of have to, because if you want to keep your fitness routines up, you have to pack the routines with you. So in this case, I just attach a TRX at the back, and that gives me enough for base fitness. Instead of ellipticals or cycling, I just go for a hike. So you just change it around depending on where you are.
Awesome. All right, so I suppose the another question that kind of comes up, a lot of employers are going to go, like, really, you need to have an address to go to, you need to be whatever, I need to know where you are, because we don't, get this whole remote thing very well. We get remote now because COVID's forced us. We don't like remote, but finding an employer that supports not just remote, but nomad remote, how's that gone for you? How do you find that?
It took a while, to be honest. And it wasn't just trying to find a remote employee that understood remote. It was trying to find an employee with meaning. And haven't really shared this yet. So this is kind of for people here, a bit of a surprise. It's world first. I'll be talking a little bit more about this in a couple of days. But
You're working at Google. Oh
no, I'm working
Starts with
at
a G?
Gitpod.
Awesome.
Starts with a G. Gitpod is some software that I've been using for the last 2 years, and the founders approached me about a month or so back and saying, "Well, come work with us," and it's really cool. How do I explain it? Richard? You ever heard it works on my computer?
No, and I've never said it either.
No,
never.
You never said it either. How do you find onboarding engineers as an engineering manager? How do you find onboarding new engineers into your teams?
It's obviously a fair bit of scripting, and I've been looking at code spaces.
Mm-hmm.
GitHub's code spaces.
Yep.
And I'm aware of Gitpod, but it's probably worth explaining it to everyone else because it is a very cool concept.
Yeah, sure. So what Gitpod really is, in essence, is you might see that there's an IDE here. To be clear, you can use multiple IDEs. You can do Visual Studio Code, Fire, which is an open source project. Visual Studio Code is also open source. And also very soon, you can do Vim and Emacs. So it's not necessarily about a graphical experience. It's about like a container, like a Docker. So what's happening here is when I want to work on something, I can just go http gitpod.io and just punch in an address for a GitHub repo, and that'll actually spin me up an instance. And in that repo is a configuration that points to a Docker file, and that makes sure that I have a reproducible developer environment. So I can just hop between environments and pull requests, and it's all pre-built. So like if you were to open a PR to me on this project, Richard, it'll pre-compile, and then when I go to review it, I don't have to wait for it to compile. So yeah, that's the background of Gitpod.
And so all of this runs in, all the back-end stuff is running in cloud containers somewhere.
Correct. It's running in the Google Data Center. All the environments set up. My other computer literally is the Google Data Center, which means when I'm like in the middle of a state forest, I can actually clone and open up a project, and if I want to do npm install, which does like 1 million round trips and latency, it's happening in the Google data center, not on my internet connection, which is pretty good, but may not be good because I'm in a state forest.
And has obviously latency issues and things like that as well.
Latency, yeah. So, yeah, I've been a month in. The team have asked me to come join. And yeah, I'm chuffed because this is like a tool I've been using the last 2 years. And I'm just helping people realize that, I don't know, how do you explain it? Would you say that...
Yeah.
Go. Would you say that developers are emotionally attached to their physical computers? The same way for DevOps, we used to be emotionally attached to naming particular computers?
I think it depends a little bit if that computer you're using for work is one supplied by the company and you had no choice in it, or if it's one you got to pick yourself.
Oh, true. Keyboards, mouse, etc.
If it's the work supplied, I've got 16 gig of RAM and an i5 on a 15-inch monitor that has no resolution at all and just murders me. And every time I try and hit F5 to run something, I have to go and get a coffee because it's terrible. Then no, I'm not attached to it because it sucks.
Yeah, that's true.
But
speaking
you're
of
running what,
resource,
16 cores there?
16 cores and 64 gig of RAM. Everyone gets that.
Mm-hmm.
My other computer is the Google data center. So yeah, that's the product. The team is split between Germany, Toronto, Greece, Pakistan, and Australia. So it's quite a time zone split. And I suppose when we're talking about remote, for example, tomorrow I'm catching up with my kids. I'm taking her out to see a musical, and I've swapped my Wednesday for a Saturday. So I think that's cool. Really important, is to find an employer that really understands asynchrony. Also means asynchrony in the sense of even the work days, like not trying to emulate asynchronous in a 9-to-5 time slot. You need to give the employees the ability to change and swap and adjust.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to break, that one, because people are so used to the 9-to-5 time slot, and then obviously the management in a lot of organizations is built around that concept as well. So if management works this way, then everyone else should work that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so awesome that you found these guys. So what are you actually doing there? What's the role?
So the role is a mixture of software engineering. What I've always done is public speaking, helping open source projects, and working on documentation.
Fantastic. That's cool. So we get to read some of your written words now.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Sorry first.
But all seriousness, if you use the product and you're having problems, please say hello. It's my job to listen and make it better. I can be your emotional cushion and pillow if the product is not living up to your expectations.
And even better, he can come to your place and help you out.
Technically, I could.
Assuming the borders are open, depending on where you are.
Yeah, but that would come with a catch. I would ask to use your washing machine, because washing clothes by hand it's always good to get a washing machine. That's an act of love. So borders is interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so how have you found that with obviously things being shut down, and can I get to Queensland, can I not?
Yeah, so borders are fascinating, interesting. It's kind of why I lent so hard into COVID safe. We'll get to later. Let's start with this notion. Before COVID, Richard, did you feel that like there was such thing as New South Wales, Victoria, and the states. Like, apart from sporting, they weren't
state of
a visible
origin.
structure. Yeah, right. Apart from sports,
You
they
know,
weren't a
and
visible
who looked
structure.
after roads and stuff in certain states, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when COVID came around, it became very apparent that there was different leadership in each one of the different
We're using the term
philosophical
leadership.
ways. Yeah. So it was hard at first, really hard. I'll give you a good example. The borders shut last year, and anyone who was a separated parent, they would have potentially court orders that say that you must spend time with your children at this date. And if the borders are closed, you could be, and you don't visit, you can't do it. And if you can't do that, I come across stories of where partners have actually used that, and they've gone to go chase that in the federal court, saying they're in breach of a consent order. So it was really nasty for separated parents for a long time, which is why I kind of lent into it, because I was trying to figure out, well, if we can get COVID safe and get the borders open, then we can kind of fix these problems. It didn't affect me too much, except kind of living on knife's edge, in the sense that 48 hours announcement, you got to go across the border again. But yeah, it wasn't too bad, but it was disruptive.
Oh, yeah. So I suppose one question before we move to the other things, thinking about the whole, washing machines and all those other things. When you started nomad life, you probably had an idea of what to expect, or what you thought you would expect, versus how things played out in reality. What was the most unexpected thing between expectation and reality, other than putting it as a meme on Twitter?
That's a hard one. I think it takes time to build up systems and routines in an area where there are no routines, right? You still, for example, I partition my day into two.
Mm-hmm.
Morning is for me, and then after lunch is for Gitpod.
Okay.
Instead of splitting my day into three, I split it like that. So what happens is I decide, in the morning, okay, I need to do a bit of fitness, I need to do some house activities and personal hobbies, whatever. But what I actually do depends on where I am. Very much where I am. So you get good at switching things out. Fitness is either at a gym if you're in the city, or it's going for a walk if you're in a forest. What we've changed the screen over there is a little application, thank you, Richard, called Wiki Camps. And this is the backbone. If you ever wondered how grey nomads and backpackers and people like myself plan their trips around Australia, and this is it. There's a little app called Wiki Maps. So Wiki, yeah, I'll link it up later below, and we'll put it down the bottom. But it shows all the facilities, everything from where you can refill water to, if you are not running a composting toilet, where you can empty that toilet, get a composting toilet, because you don't want to deal with a dump point. They're messy. It's literally a hole in the ground and a hose on the side to wash down everything. It's nasty. Get a composting toilet. So much better. And even down to whether a spot, how long you can stay at a spot, or if there's Telstra reception or not.
Very cool. All right, and then switching to topics. We've talked about COVID a little bit now, and you mentioned COVID safe. So one of the things we thought would be fun to do would be to dig into that a little more. You've been a little bit vocal, and you've made newspapers and stuff about COVID safe and the governments, and I'm trying to describe it visually.
Yeah.
So the rant room is open. We'd love to hear it.
I have a story. let's start with this story.
Start with the
With all
story.
good stories, it starts with a timing. This was 2 days ago. I was just outside, waking up to start my day, and I was walking past a gym, and out was an elderly couple, like boomer, and the husband was chatting with the wife quite loudly, and the wife was quite visibly like annoyed. Her battery life is being used 100%, and she's not getting much usage out of her phone. And the husband's like working with her, said, just turn off Bluetooth. Like, I know you can't uninstall the app, just turn off Bluetooth. And I didn't get down to the bottom of it, why her employer, maybe she works for the government or does have you, and they're mandating the installation of the application. But here's a conflict between like husband and wife. And the solution is just disable the application, just turn off the Bluetooth. And frankly, if you still got the application installed, don't bother. It doesn't work. It absolutely does not work. It's real. If it worked, we'd know. That's one thing that we've learned with Australian politics over the last year. If something's working, there'll be a press release and a PR thing the next morning for it. But it's been mum's of words silent now for almost 9 months, right? And a whole bunch of security researchers and privacy researchers have published some really interesting research. Some of the research is when the application was first launched, the first launch, when it was first launched, it was in breach of its privacy policy for 2 sprints.
Okay.
Like, the application said that it would rotate its identifier, meaning that you're anonymous. And for a month, that rotation wasn't happening. So the application was written with legislation, and that was backed by a privacy policy. And we had 2 iterations, 2 sprints, where this was ignored. So the entire project on launch failed its privacy policy and allowed anyone to track anyone. So if you're thinking on the notion of, like, say, like domestic violence or other thing like that, you're able to figure out where someone is and just trace them, right? And just follow down the street with a standard app you can get from the Google Android Play Store, because the identifier, which was meant to rotate, was not rotating. It was fixed for a month. So you could actually set, like, it's an identifier that would go, is Jeff there or not? How far away are you from Jeff? And that was kind of nasty, because the application was coming from Singapore's application, and the engineers from the Singapore team validated this research and fixed it within 2 or 3 hours, and they merged the pull request. So we're in this weird situation where upstream repository has said...
Just pause for a second. This is an Australian COVID safe app written in Singapore?
Correct.
Okay.
So
we don't have any mobile developers in Australia.
For what we can see, that the government department that was responsible for transforming it, this was their first mobile project. So they went out to a bunch of consultancies. But the actual application itself was a code drop and a brand new repository. It was not like a fork in Git. It was a literal zip tarball that was extracted from Singapore. Anyway, so we found the code in Singapore. We found the problem.
Yeah.
Singapore said that it's fixed, and the end result was we tried everything. Let's try and contact the government, like media, press. We ended up on ABC Radio National at 7:30 a.m. saying, it's been validated by Singapore. You can trace anyone in Australia. The privacy policy is broken. And it was a month in before they fixed it. But you know what's important when you're doing a massive national project like that, Richard?
Tell me.
Guess how they prioritize the first sprint? Guess how they prioritize the first sprint? As Richard, the professional Scrum Master, you hear something like that.
I'm guessing it was the random order generator.
Yes, it was kind of like that. They decided to not prioritize. I don't know what happened, but somehow the information that they had a massive privacy thing that completely undermined the entire program of work, they didn't prioritize it at all. What they did do was they did a new coat of paint. Yep. They replaced, the first sprint was spent on moving pixels instead of fixing the security and privacy issues. And I believe we've destroyed and lost Richard. Are you there, Richard? Ah.
Maybe I know what
a moment for Richard. And do. Are you there, Richard? We have James.
All right,
no Richard.
Interviewer. Yeah, I'm not sure. We seem to have lost Richard, so I'll add him back.
He'll be back.
Yeah, he obviously needs some internet on his house, like you, with the three networks. You wouldn't have run into this sort of problem.
4 currently, but yes. But yeah, so the first sprint, instead of fixing this privacy issues, was they moved pixels. That's it. And they continually claimed that they were agile.
I remember they changed like the logo or something like that. Was that the sprint you're talking about? Hang on, I'll pop Richard
back.
Welcome back.
The government cut me off. I asked the wrong questions.
Yes. Okay, so quick recap. The first sprint, they would have received notification for ABC radio interview that they're in breach of the privacy policy. The first sprint happens, and what they do is they prioritize pushing pixels, new paint. And they claimed they were agile, and they were doing Scrum, Richard. Were they doing agile and Scrum? New information had arrived.
They would. So here's the thing: they were doing agile. They weren't being agile.
Exactly. What's the difference in the two?
I don't know.
Well, they might have been trying to do the waterfall inside a 2-week sprint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They should have thrown away the backlog or postponed the backlog when a major security issue or privacy issue to undermine the program of work happened, right? That's agile.
You would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's being agile.
So did you find this by digging into the code itself? Because obviously if they did because they put the code up on a GitHub repo, right? And it was...
No, they didn't.
I thought they did. They talked about...
They did.
People to look at it, and then here's the code, and there's a repo. And not that I ever looked, but...
Well, it's a good thing you didn't, because that's interesting in itself. When they did release the source code, they attached a terms and conditions that said, if you look at this source code, you are bound to this contract. And the contract, the details of like what you're bound to is you must report security issues via these channels. You may not use this code for product development. If you use it for all these other things, then there may be liabilities from not just from the transformation agency, but by the contractors or the consultancies of them, because there might be material damage if you report information that would cause rework. So
what license did they release it under? Because that's not that doesn't sound like an open source license.
No. They released it under here's the source code, but if you look at it, you're screwed. It's like a poison pill. So we didn't. The answer is we didn't look at that source code. What we did, when the application launched, because it's a Android application, we just decompiled it. Like, we just turned it back into Java, and we looked at the implementation. And then it falls under reverse engineering laws, right? And we just looked at it.
I'm assuming it wasn't obfuscated in any way. It was fairly straightforward.
No obfuscation, nothing at all. And we actually got Greg Hunt, the health minister, like pointing to these people, like they're looking at the source code, they're saying it's all okay. And like in the first 72 hours, like, yeah, it looks okay. It's not doing anything too dodgy. And then we went into implementation details and found that it was in breach of its privacy policy. And this is the kicker. We call this issue number 5. Now, CVEs have a rating out of 10, Richard, as you know. We had a 9.8.
Okay.
9.8. Yeah, so what happened was, for a very long time, for months on end, by the government is pushing everyone to install the application. In essence, the government is telling people to install an application with a 9.8 CVE. And it wasn't just Australia this affected. This was at a platform level on Apple and Android. We found problems with how people were using the Bluetooth stack. I'll get into it. So meanwhile, Australia is pushing people to install this application, which has a 9.8 CVE, and the researchers are calling like the Alberta government, the Singapore government, Poland, Australia, and everything. We're just like sending messages on LinkedIn saying, we need to universally fix this. And by the way, none of us are paid to do this because the vulnerability was it allowed you to remotely connect to anyone's phone and become a network adapter or a keyboard or a mouse.
Oh, that's nice.
Nothing serious, right? Nothing serious. Nothing that could be weaponized.
Just take control. It's fine.
Take control of someone's handset. It essentially, and this wasn't just Australia. This was countries around the world, because what's happening is, it's easy to think about. These centralized applications, they're running Bluetooth in pairing mode, meaning it's continually enabling anyone in the world to pair to them. And when it's in that mode, anyone can connect to them. And that means you're trusting the client, and the client says, hey, I'm COVID safe. And it goes, well, wow, you're COVID safe. So the server, which is running on the phone, goes, I'm connected to COVID safe. And then that adversary just says, hey, I'm not COVID safe. I'm a network adapter. I'm a keyboard and a mouse. That's a vulnerability. It was that simple. And the Australian government was pushing people to install the application through that period. We're in a pandemic.
Got to be seen to do something. I mean, so at the end of the day, the stats I recall, and I must admit this is only recalling from what I've heard on public media, and I'm probably wrong, but at most there were, I think, 14 connections identified, and they were already picked up through through contact tracing, other contact tracing mechanisms anyway. So,
well,
kind of useless, or are the stats worse or better?
Very useless. Very useless. I didn't get into some of the technical details. I recommend you look up Vanessa Teague and Jim Musserad. We'll share the details below of all the write-ups. But even if all the technical details I talk about, there are actual problems that prevent it from working. So even if all those technical details were working, it still wouldn't have worked because it's bad science. If you think about a connection-based Bluetooth, where you got a pair to every device, from a space and time point of view, that's quadratic. So if you're sitting in a baseball stadium or just a footy stadium, for example, and you want to do a digital handshake, you can only pair with one device at a time. In a stadium with 8,000 people, each one has got to pair and synchronize with each other. And the more people is around, the more the space increases and the more the time works, because each has to. It's just bad science.
So you have to. It only works in test matches.
No, it gets worse. The more people you're around, here we've got a contact tracing application. The more people you're around, the worse it works. Which is not how contact tracing applications should work.
No.
So it should have been Bluetooth beacon based, because that requires no connection, no handshake. It's constant in space and time.
Yep.
You can look at it from this point of mathematics and work out the direction we should have gone. As we know, Australia does not obey the laws of mathematics. So we went for the connection-based approach, because quadratic in space and time, it doesn't apply in Australia.
All right, so final question, and then we're going to throw to James a little. Are there things we can learn from other people's mistakes on this one?
Yeah, there's so much. Look at the Netherlands government.
Yep.
They actually held a symposium. They held a symposium where we had the Canadian government, the UK government, and a couple others, I forget at this stage. And they actually had a raw retrospective between countries. And this was just something that running on meetup.com. Like anyone could have joined. Australia was absent. And it was as raw of a retrospective that you've run me under, Richard. Like it was like all the topics were like, okay, it's a high profile thing. How do we protect our employees from the public? Right. And what did you learn from that? It was raw, and it was some valuable learning. Australia was absent from it. And I cite Netherlands for one particular reason. They were stuffing up as hard as Australia was. Like when they first were doing this, they announced a hackathon, and they gave everyone pizzas.
And jelly lollies. Please say there were jelly lollies.
Yeah, and all those wonderful things. And all the entrants were either PowerPoint slideware decks, or they were pirated IP, or they were rebranding the Singapore application as their own consultancy companies. Anyway, awesome. So their national Department for Defense went through and audited it all, and mysteriously their comments and feedbacks ended up in the media. Hackathon cancelled. Readjustments of priorities because the document became public. It's a good thing it did. So what I'm getting at is the Netherlands was heading on a path as bad as Australia. And then they turned and they ran it as a proper open source project with open community where anyone could join retrospectives, anyone can join the sprint, and it was fully open. There was nothing private. And they brought in the best in the community in the Netherlands. But not only that, they also brought in international expertise and they saw how it was going bad in other countries, and they actually were being agile. On your point, Richard, they were agile.
Awesome.
They had learnings and they applied it, but we didn't see that happen here in Australia, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Okay, so we'll pause there just because time's getting away, and we will just keep talking all night otherwise, which is fun for us, but people probably need to sleep at some point. I want to say, Jeff, thank you for everything. Like awesome insight into the genuine digital nomad life.
Thank you.
I kind of want you to pull the curtain open and see what's behind you, but it's an airbase, so it's not going to be that exciting. And the beautiful drone footage. I love it. Just love it. So
would you believe right there I have no Telstra reception but 75 megabits of Vodafone reception. Vodafone. Why does Vodafone have better reception there than Telstra?
Well, they had to have better reception somewhere because they're generally terrible everywhere else.
I know, right? So that's the idea of merging internet links is if a couple of them are terrible, hopefully you get a marginal internet link.
So good. Thank you for sharing a little slice of life and then talking through some of the COVID things and the lessons we can learn from that. So again, I love it. And James, hopefully you've got some questions for those who are still hanging around and can give away some prizes.
All right.
The answer is yes. Let me turn my camera on and do the thing.
Okay. Yeah. So
you are mute.
The audience.
You're on mute.
I'll pop it in the chat. Okay. So also the competition. So what I was going to ask you.
Should we make up words?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, it's just me. Okay.
I can hear Richard. I can hear James.
All right. I'll pretend everyone can hear and I'll just be quiet now.
Okay, so back to the competition. Yeah, Richard, I think you need some proper internet, like on a van or something. So I was going to ask, how does Jeff sort his internet wherever he goes? This is the first question.
So
Don't answer
the key.
that.
Okay. Yep.
And on that one, that's pretty good. But what did you do with all the links? All right. I think we'll take Alan's answer anyway. I was going to say bonded them.
Yeah.
But that seems pretty good. So Alan, go hit me up afterwards on Meetup. Send me your email address and I'll send you through the license. And it was really tempting to ask about the toilet, but I've decided about toilets.
Everyone poops. You become a parent, you get used to it. That's your feedback. That's your agile. Being agile is looking at poop charts. That's how you know it's working.
The level of interest of my kids in poo is pretty high as well.
Yeah.
Sticking to the technical level, what was the biggest problem with COVID safe? I mean, that's too broad. What was the biggest security issue with COVID safe? The not working bit was a bit of an issue.
The fact that we're giving medical professionals and force a tool and forcing them to use that tool when they have 8 hours a day. So in effect, it's stealing their time that could be used for contact tracing. That's not an issue at all.
Alan, I think you got them both, but you're only allowed to win one license in one.
Sarah's privacy one, I think, is probably a valid. That one more than anything else.
Valid.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Sarah, you've got one as well. So send me your email. I might have it already, but just send it just in case, and I'll send you through the license there. And I have a question for you too, Jeff. Did you consider doing the nomad life on a boat rather than a van?
That's a fascinating question, and the answer is yes.
Drive a van onto a boat?
No, there are legitimately people who do the boat nomad life. It gets a little bit harder for marinas and the berths and where you can attach your boat. A good way to know if you can stay at a place and park your boat there or anchor it up is if you get woken up at 5 a.m. by someone cussing you out saying that's their mooring point. It gets a little bit more priority. It's possible, but it's a little bit more priority. But anyway, could you change the screen over to the screen that I'm sharing?
Oh, sorry, Jeff. There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to be, and I am, posting more about some of my ventures. If you head to ghuntley.com, there you'll find right now a little thing that explains how you do mail in Australia if you're heading down this path. I'm going to be talking more and sharing information about really good camping spots, cooking, how do you cook food, right? To survival, safety, and all planning and everything. So if you want details on what's happening, leave your email address there, subscribe, and click on the bell, and I'll send you the details.
Smash that like button.
Yep.
You meant to point at it though, somewhere down there.
Deja vu. Pre-show, we're doing this to try and figure out directions.
So good, so good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another chaotic, as usual, alt.net meeting. And apologies for my NBN connection. I'm actually on 160-ish megabits on average at the moment. So obviously it's an average, not a point in time at times. So fail. But all good. We will have something for you for next month as well. Probably a bit more tech and a little less alt, which is all good. And Jeff, again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great catching up with you and chatting through things like this. It's so cool.
No problem. Cheers, James. Cheers, Richard.
James, any last words? Otherwise, we out.
And also, if anyone's got anything they want to talk about next month, then drop us a line. as usual, through the meetup. We're looking for speakers for next month.
Perfect. All right, that's a wrap, people. We will see you next month.
See you later.
See ya.